Well, Zachary Zane is incredibly funny, and he just wrote this terrific book about bisexuality. It's called Boyslut. Yeah, we both got it. All right.
Yeah.
Getting really great reviews. One of the best books I've read this year. And I totally agree with Dan Savage, who calls him one of the, quote, best sex writers working today. So welcome, Zachary.
Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to delve in here.
All right. Well, you have coined a new term, and probably it's trending on Twitter or something like that.
Yeah.
But the term is bisexual audibility.
Yeah.
What is that?
Sure. So I think we're more familiar with the phrase bisexual visibility or just the concept of visibility more generally. But bisexual visibility is a little bit more challenging than other types of visibility for marginalized groups, right? Because unless if you have a man on one arm and a woman on the other arm and a non-binary person on the arm, people don't know that you're bisexual. They assume that if you are a man in a relationship with another man, that you're gay, man in relationship with women, that you're straight. And, like I always think about it in terms of like how Dove does those campaigns where they like try to get like marginalized people in it. And when they do that, like if they do a campaign that features all dark-skinned Black women, we know this is a win for visibility. It's very clear for whom we're being visible for. Same if we do like a body positive campaign. We can just kind of tell by looking who's being visible. But you can't with bisexuality. If you had a bunch of bi people lined up, you would have to say at the bottom, like, all these people are actually bisexual. So it's a little bit more challenging to be visibly bisexual, which is why I kind of coined the term bisexual audibility. And the idea here is that we actually need to be talking about bisexual. We need to use the label bisexual. Right now, bisexual people are significantly less likely to come out than their gay and lesbian peers, to come out to important people in their life, to people at work, to their lovers, to their partners. And part of the reason why is because people don't say the word bisexual. They don't embrace the label. So I think it's just really important for us to be as loud and obnoxious about bisexuality as humanly possible. And I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing and really, advocating for talking about it since we can't be bisexually visible the same way.
Well, thank you for being one of the loudest bisexual people that I have come across. You're doing a lot for the
My
community.
pleasure.
Shame is a big theme in your book, and
Yeah.
frankly, I think shame is the number one issue that most queer people have to deal with at some point in their life. And you write about a mindset that to make it, quote, easier to tell shame to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You want to share about that?
Yeah, I have to remember what I wrote here. But I think what I was discussing in this context is that like shame is often used as a tool for people in power to sustain and maintain their power. It's a way that they control people.
Yeah.
So, like straight people, slut shame women, and that's the way to keep like a woman tethered to one man. Often we feel shame for not working hard enough. And that's just because like, capitalism has taught us that we should be working and working and working. And so then it gets us to work harder and harder and feeling like we need to work all the time. So shame is a way that like often like people in power, entity in power kind of sustain their power and keep the masses in line. So often what I like to do is try to figure out where is this shame coming from? So is like the shame coming from, a religion, from society, from my parents? And when I can actually really get to the root of the shame and realize, oh, this is not something I actually feel bad about. It's something I was told I should feel bad about. It's much easier to kind of tell your shame to go fuck itself. So it really is important, I think, to get to the root. One thing I've heard recently is when you feel shame is whose voice do you hear it in? So if you hear it in your mom's voice, do you hear it in your pastor's voice? But yeah, I think when you have a better understanding and you can kind of look at the larger societal picture here that's trying to instill shame in you, you can be like, this has nothing to do with me and I should not be feeling this way. And I think another thing to combat shame, and I talk about a lot in this book, is really having community and friends and people you can talk to about this. I feel like shame thrives in isolation. It really does. When you are alone and you feel shameful, you feel like no one understands you. You feel like everyone hates you. You feel like you're disgusting, gross, one of a million things. And it's very easy for you to start kind of having this negative shame spiral and just kind of going deeper and deeper down this rabbit hole. But when you're able to kind of talk it out with someone, of course, that's where therapy comes in handy too, but just having a support system of friends to kind of like help you get out of your head can just be really helpful to kind of pump the brakes before shame kind of becomes this all encompassing entity that kind of takes you over.
Yeah. You should be a therapist.
It's a,
I keep thumbs up for all that.
thank you. I almost was going to be a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to I was going to focus on research. I was getting a PhD in clinical psychology, and then started writing about butt sex, and here we are. So
Here we are. The rest is history.
butt sex also extremely therapeutic. So in a way, I am doing therapy.
Hey, well, that is a great segue, because you talk a lot about sex. And in particular, you talk a lot about kinks in this book. And you're right, kinks are common. And what do you want us to know about kinks?
I think what I really wanted to address with kinks is like, you are not alone. And I kind of say this in the book where I'm like, I am not special. And that was actually one of the biggest like revelations that I had. And it doesn't mean that I'm not unique or whatever it is, but like my experience in terms of like embracing my bisexuality, my kinks, my fetishes, all of that, there are gajillions of other people that have it too. And we're lucky right now to live in an era where it's so much easier to meet other people that share your kinks. You know, we have things like FetLife, we have Recon. If you're looking, you know, for more open relationship types deal, we have Field, but like we have ways to connect with other people who have your kinks. And so I think it's really important. Again, this is kind of like goes back to the shame thing too. When you think you're the only person in the world with this kink, you're going to think that you're disgusting, you're gross, you're deviant, you're different. But when you actually look at the prevalency of it, you realize like, oh my God, there are another million people that have it. And so a lot of also what I was talking about in the book is no matter what your relationship is to sex or to kinks or your like relationship orientation in terms of monogamy, polyamory, there are other people like you and you can find a match. You just have to put yourself out there. You have to use the apps. You have to meet people. You have to go to meetup spaces, but you don't have to sacrifice parts of yourself because you feel like you're so special, you're so unique, you're so different. Like I guarantee you, there's someone else who will complement your sexuality, and the challenge is finding them.
Let's talk more about finding people and matching. And you
Yep.
write, quote, that Grindr is the unhappiest app.
Well,
I want to hear
that was a study that actually showed
Yeah.
that. I don't want to be like, yes, I just clarify that was a study that said that.
That was a study, but I want you to elaborate on sort of how do you manage Grindr and how do you manage getting sex and getting love? It's complicated. You know, what are your tips around that?
Grindr it's so interesting. It's just like of a phenomenon that this thing exists. And you know, I feel like every queer man who's been on Grindr has had a tumultuous relationship with it. There are very few people I know who's like, I've had a completely healthy relationship with Grindr. Like, I don't think those words have ever been spoken.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, all queer men kind of know just the level of racism, femphobia, transphobia, fat phobia, and just people being truly awful to each other on this app. Which is like, okay, just because you don't want to fuck someone doesn't mean you have you have to be an asshole. You can say like, hey, you're cute, but I'm not interested, or hey, I'm not looking right now. Like whatever it is, you don't have to go on this tirade calling this person disgusting. Like, and I know it's, you know, it's like the common phrase like hurt people hurt people. It's like I know the people who are engaging terribly on Grindr, or the people who say like, oh, I'm on my way over, and then you douche and get ready, and then you're like, hey, are you coming? And then they just block you for no reason. Like I know these people aren't happy. I know these people aren't fulfilled in their life. Like, and I want to extend them some sympathy because of that. Of course, it doesn't excuse their behavior. Your past trauma doesn't excuse you from being an asshole. You should be working through it instead of lashing out at other people in your community. But so Grindr is challenging. Grindr is challenging. But to actually get to your question here. So how do I engage with it in a way that is like healthy and doesn't make me want to lose my mind? Is I really do have like clear parameters for when I use it. You know, when I'm out with friends, I'm not using it. I'm not checking in it when I go to the bathroom. If I'm out on a date, you know, like there's times where I used to be out on dates and I check the Grindr when I was in bathroom. I'm like, well, I'm clearly not being present with this person on my date and not giving them a chance. So really making sure that I only use Grindr when I'm alone, when I have free time, when I'm not on a deadline. You know what I mean? When it's like, okay, I'm putzing around at night, it's 9 p.m., I'm stoned. I can spend the next 45 minutes sending some nudes and flirting with some people, and maybe someone won't come over and maybe someone won't. But I also think it's good to kind of set time limits, because otherwise you can be on it for like 5 hours, not have sex, and you're like, oh my God, I just wasted. You do that once in a while, fine. But if you find yourself doing that multiple times a week, that is a time suck. And so I try to be like, if no one's coming over in 20 minutes, I'm going to cut my losses, jack off, and go to bed. I also think another thing is, and I get this, from writing the sex and relationship advice column at Men's Health, and I have a lot of queer men write in because it's usually my followers are the one who's writing in. So it's a very queer column. But they're like, when they're like, oh yeah, I'm having trouble finding a boyfriend. I'm like, well, where are you looking? Like, yeah, I'm on Grindr and Scruff, and like, I can't find one. And I'm like, you're on an app dedicated to casual anonymous sex, and you're frustrated that you can't find your boyfriend. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who've met their boyfriends through Grindr and Scruff and all of that. But that's not the correct app for it. If you're looking for actually someone to date, you should maybe get on Hinge. You should get on Bumble. You should like actually go out on dates with someone. Like someone coming over, even if you have great sex, like someone coming over, saying 3 words, having great sex, they're out of your apartment in 30 minutes. While that is fun and incredible and amazing, that's probably not going to lead to a serious relationship. Like you need to kind of put in the work and prioritize it. So I think there's kind of that discrepancy there where gay men are like, who really want a boyfriend, instead are wasting their time on Grindr. And again, you can want both. And I'm kind of in that camp, like where it's like, I do want a boyfriend, but I also like having casual sex. So I'm not going to stop having casual sex till I find a boyfriend. And I'd like to still have casual sex when I have a boyfriend, being in a poly relationship. But just making sure you're actually balancing this correctly, and you're not spending too much time having the casual sex and really prioritizing like actually going on dates and meeting people.
Good advice. Yeah. I would love to keep talking to you, but we could talk about this for an hour.
Oh,
but
of course.
I'm not going to do that. I want to just thank you for coming today to talking about your book. I think it's a really important book. I urge everyone to take a look at it. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I got a Boyslut, a memoir manifesto, sold everywhere books are sold. On Amazon, just make sure to write it as one word. And that's actually on purpose, because if it was 2 words, we would have been flagged because of the word slut in it. So it actually had to be 1 word. So if you type it in 2 words, you got the algorithm kind of goes nuts because it triggers as a bad word. So Boyslut, 1 word. And yeah, you can follow me on like Twitter and Instagram. I'm trying to get off Twitter for my mental health. Unfortunately, I have to be on it to promote my book and still my writing. So I'm more on Instagram, and that's at Zachary Zane _ and my website is zacharyzane.com. And if you reach out there, I'll make sure to respond.
Well, I think anyone who reads your book, no matter who they are, they're going to let go of yet another layer of shame around sex, around who they are. We always have another layer to let go. And the good news is you're also going to laugh out loud while you're letting go of shame. So thank you.
Thank you.